July 12th. A heat wave simmered over Liverpool's South Docks, but inside one nondescript warehouse in Garston, a shipping container had just arrived, its wooden floor hollowed out, packed with bricks of Colombian cocaine worth nearly £20 million. This wasn't a random seizure. It was the first real breach in what would become the UK's most persistent and complex narco network, the Scouse Cartel. You've probably heard whispers: Dubai condos, Spanish villas, encrypted phones, bodies dropped, but you probably can't even imagine the full scale of it. So before we get started, I'll ask you to subscribe to the channel and put a like on the video if you really like what I'm doing. Let me know what surprised you most after you watch the full story. Back in the early 2000s, these guys were just postcodes and pebble dash, sons of dockers and debt collectors, pushing ounces of weed and wraps of brown in the backstreets of Anfield, Toxteth, and Kirkdale. But a few of them, brothers, cousins, and childhood mates, saw beyond turf wars. They saw logistics. With the fall of older crews like the Whitney Gang and Curtis Warren behind bars, there was room to grow, and they did quietly. By 2015, they were flying low on police radar, but moving high volumes. Heroin to Glasgow, crack to Belfast, kilos of coke to university towns. The product was always purer, the price was fixed, and the enforcement? Ruthless but efficient. You step out of line, your nan's windows go in, you talk to police, you disappear from your gym. But the big shift came when they stopped being just suppliers and started brokering bulk import deals from Holland and Spain directly into the UK. They began meeting Colombians in Rotterdam cafes, paying Albanian fixers to secure port access in Antwerp, hiring Polish lorry drivers to move tons through Dover under fake cargo. The lads weren't just selling anymore, they were orchestrating. So what pushed this working-class crew into full-blown international syndicate? The answer lies in how they communicated. With MI5 pressuring mobile providers and police bugging burner phones, the Scouse Cartel adapted faster than anyone else. By 2017, they were early adopters of EncroChat, a supposedly uncrackable French encrypted phone system popular among European criminals. They didn't just use it, they mastered it. Handles like Frosty Tanker, Big Mop, and Hazard Fella became known within law enforcement circles only after the system collapsed. But for years, those usernames were the beating heart of an empire. On Encro, orders were placed with shocking precision. 25 white ones for Tuesday, same yard. Tell French lad to double wrap. That meant 25 kilos of cocaine arriving in a UK haulage depot. Payments were arranged using cryptocurrency or smurfed cash, broken into dozens of £9,000 deposits to evade laundering laws. They'd run checks on each courier, cross-referencing their schedules, habits, and even how often they spoke to their mums. Loyalty was monitored, and paranoia was policy. Even street dealers in Widnes and Birkenhead had access to mid-level encryption. If a user turned informant, they'd be blackballed on the system within hours. Trusted messages came with signature phrases. Wrapped like Nan's biscuits meant verified goods. Football scores was a go code for pickups. You see, this wasn't just encrypted chat, it was a language. What made the EncroChat era so dangerous was the distance it allowed. The top guys didn't touch drugs. They didn't even meet the couriers anymore. From Dubai or Malaga, they coordinated shipments, assigned cleaners, and managed debts like CEOs running a multinational. And as law enforcement later discovered, the network spanned thousands of messages detailing shipments, hits, revenge threats, and routine banter about football, fashion, and watches. So how do you infiltrate a system when you don't even know who's really talking? You start by following the routes. This cartel didn't rely on one path, they built a maze. Their drugs moved through UK ferry ports like Holyhead, Portsmouth, and Dover, stashed inside insulation foam or hidden in machinery. Others came across the Channel Tunnel by truck, concealed in shipments of Italian tomatoes or Spanish marble tiles. It was all about frequency. Move enough legal loads and one dirty one slips through unnoticed. And when they really needed control, they used their own logistics firms, fake companies with real trucks, forged manifests, and drivers too scared or too loyal to talk. From Liverpool, the gear moved south. M6, M25, M3, Motorway networks became lifelines. Vans with cloned plates ran up to Scotland. Rented lockups in Leeds and Manchester held emergency stock. Couriers were usually clean lads, no records, decent jobs, who got paid £1,500 per run. Not flashy, not greedy, just reliable. One of them, a 22-year-old apprentice plumber from Bootle, moved 80 kilos over 10 months before being stopped near Maidstone with half a kilo in the spare wheel. The higher-ups were harder to track. They flew EasyJet to Malaga, hopped across to Marbella, rented villas under their girlfriends' names, and met other brokers at high-end restaurants. From there, they'd do deals with Moroccan hash suppliers and Dutch cocaine contacts, facilitated by Balkan middlemen who offered door-to-door service. And the product didn't just go one way. Cash came back, by car, by human mule, or sometimes couriered in suitcases by influencers, and models happy to earn £5,000 for a single return flight to Dubai with a bag full of shrink-wrapped notes. That route, UK to Spain to Dubai, became the Golden Triangle. Each point insulated the bosses further. Each movement created one more layer between the money and the man calling the shots. But no matter how far the drugs traveled, the command always led back to one place, Liverpool. So why was Dubai such a magnet for these northern kingpins? Dubai offered more than just sunshine and luxury cars. It offered sanctuary, no extradition treaty with the UK, a booming property market ready for laundering, and a high roller culture where no one asks where your millions come from. That's why, by 2018, multiple Scouse Cartel leaders had relocated to the Emirates. On paper, they were consultants or import-export businessmen. In reality, they ran one of the most lucrative drug supply chains Europe had ever seen. From penthouses with views of the Burj Khalifa. They weren't hiding in the shadows. These men wore Richard Mille watches, posed beside gold-plated Bentleys, and posted cryptic quotes on Instagram like, "Loyalty is everything," or "built from nothing." But there was always an edge, armed bodyguards, encrypted phones, and paranoia behind the smiles. Dubai was their fortress, but even fortresses can fall. Law enforcement agencies had been watching. British and Dutch officers quietly traced the flow of cocaine profits from Liverpool, through shell companies in Spain, then into Dubai real estate. One cartel broker, known by his EncroChat handle Iron Meat, owned 4 flats across the marina and drove a fleet of rented supercars under different aliases. But his lifestyle caught up to him. In late 2020, tipped off by the EncroChat breach, authorities raided his apartment while he was live streaming a poker game to his associates back in Kirkby. That arrest cracked the illusion. Suddenly, Dubai was no longer untouchable. Within months, other UK fugitives, some linked to this network, were named, located, and flagged by international policing units. Extradition talks gained momentum. And slowly, one by one, the cartel's overseas leadership began to fall. But even as Dubai-based bosses were picked off, their operations kept running. It raised an alarming question: just how deep was this structure, and who else was really pulling the strings behind those encrypted screens? The unraveling came faster than anyone expected. March 2021. A coordinated series of raids across Liverpool, Wirral, Bootle, and Halewood. Operation Venetic in full swing. Doors came off at 5 a.m. Flash bangs lit up council estates. and dogs were sent in first. 22 people arrested in 48 hours. Most of them had no prior records, but the real victory wasn't just in the arrests, it was in what they left behind. Hard drives, encrypted devices, ledgers written in code, and most crucially, paper trails. Despite the tech, some lieutenants still kept notebooks. Nicknames, dates, weights, sums. Cross-referenced with EncroChat data, they confirmed what investigators had long suspected. Liverpool wasn't just a supply point, it was a command center for a Europe-wide trafficking syndicate. One courier, a 29-year-old father of two from Huyton, confessed during interview that he moved cash to Dubai, 150,000 pounds at a time, vacuum sealed and duct taped to his back under his hoodie. Another, arrested in Alicante, admitted to renting properties for stash houses across Spain and transporting drugs in false-bottomed furniture vans. The system was flawless until it wasn't. The real blow came with the capture of two major coordinators. One, a former semi-pro footballer turned logistics mastermind, had been living in Marbella under a false Irish passport. He was pulled from a beach bar after a tip from an old associate who'd flipped. The other, arrested in a gated Dubai complex, had operated under 5 aliases and managed the cartel's crypto transactions, washing millions through gambling websites and NFT platforms. With each arrest, a piece of the puzzle was recovered. But for detectives, it wasn't just about people. It was about the roles they played. Cleaners, couriers, fixers, brokers. Each one filled a critical function, and each operated like they were running their own legit franchise. But who were these men really, behind the aliases and aliases of aliases? Strip away the pseudonyms and encryption, and what you found were familiar faces, local lads who'd grown up on the same estates as their victims. But these weren't just street thugs. One was the cousin of a Liverpool footballer, with luxury watch businesses as a front. Another was a used car dealer whose showroom had never sold a single vehicle, yet his bank account saw £80,000 monthly loans from offshore entities. Nightclub owners, boxing promoters, even a former charity fundraiser. Each played their role with just enough legitimacy to stay out of reach. Take Liam "Slick" McHale, a name repeated across seized EncroChat transcripts. In Liverpool, he was known for his immaculate designer wardrobe and 250-pound haircuts. But behind the scenes, he managed the cartel's mainland Europe storage, coke in Belgium, heroin in Bulgaria, hash in the south of Spain. He spoke 4 languages and rotated SIMs like poker chips. When he was finally caught in Dusseldorf, the arresting officers mistook him for a corporate executive. Then there was Benny, a soft-spoken father of 3, who volunteered at his kids' school and owned a mobile phone shop in Norris Green. That shop, as it turned out, sold modified EncroChat handsets at £1,500 apiece, preloaded with secure apps and reset timers. His real job? Supplying tech to half of Liverpool's underworld. These men weren't invisible because they hid. They were invisible because they blended in. Clean records, designer clothes, school runs, and charity events. But behind closed doors, they handled multi-million-pound deals, sanctioned beatings, and laundered cash through crypto wallets linked to Dubai real estate. And yet for all the money and bravado, their lives were ruled by fear, of betrayal, of raids, of encrypted leaks. One misstep, one rogue courier, one bitter ex-girlfriend, and the entire house of cards could collapse. So how many lives were destroyed in service of this empire? Thousands. That's the real cost. For every 40,000 pounds Rolex these men wore, there were addicts overdosing in tower blocks, teenagers stabbed in county lines turf wars, and entire families torn apart. The Scouse Cartel didn't just move drugs, they moved death. And often their own people became casualties too. Internal betrayal was the most common cause of violence. When a courier in Preston was suspected of shorting £3,000 from a delivery, he vanished. His body was later found in woodland near Rivington, hands duct-taped, 2 bullets in the back. No one claimed it, but the message echoed. Even low-level mistakes were fatal, and then came the overdoses. 1 kilo of their Dutch-sourced cocaine tested at 93% purity. By the time it reached Sheffield or Hull, it was usually cut down to 40%. But when greedy street dealers pushed it raw to make a point, users died. 6 in one weekend in Blackpool, 3 more in Bangor, all linked to one batch, traced back to a warehouse in Warrington owned by a shelf company registered under the name of a scaffolding firm. Completely fake, entirely strategic. But not all violence was quiet. In 2020, a revenge hit linked to a lost 10-kilo shipment left a man shot dead in front of his children in a Southport car park. The triggerman fled to Marbella that same night. Spanish police picked him up 6 months later, drunk, talking too loud about cleaning up old business in a nightclub. For the top brass, the violence was just another tool. Keep fear alive, keep mouths shut. But over time, that fear corroded loyalty. 2 lieutenants, both facing decades, flipped. One even handed over access codes to a hidden crypto wallet worth £1.7 million. So what happens when the money's frozen, the killers are jailed, and the bosses are on the run? What happens is collapse. Not with fireworks or a final shootout, but with silence. Phones that once buzzed day and night went dark. Bank accounts froze mid-transaction. Business fronts shuttered without warning. The fall of the Scouse Cartel didn't happen in one dramatic moment. It came piece by piece as law enforcement used the EncroChat breach to pull thread after thread until the whole network unraveled. The financial damage was massive. Over £30 million in assets seized, villas in Marbella, luxury flats in Dubai, sports cars, watches, even a private yacht linked to one of the top brokers. Hundreds of bank accounts were flagged. Cash-heavy businesses like salons, vape shops, and takeaway joints were suddenly exposed as laundering machines. In court, the stories stunned even seasoned detectives. One man, previously known only by his encrypted handle Juicy Nut, was unmasked as a 34-year-old with no official income who'd spent over £500,000 in 6 months on clothes, holidays, and bulletproof vehicles. Another, a softly spoken dad from Croxteth, had personally coordinated 300 kilos of cocaine into the UK over 2 years. He was sentenced to 27 years. His last words in court? "Tell my boys I was always trying to build something better." And yet, the vacuum didn't last long. New groups moved in. Albanians, Romanians, homegrown crews in Manchester and Birmingham, eager to fill the gap. Cocaine demand never dipped. Prices adjusted. Supply routes shifted. Liverpool's streets stayed the same. Because in this game, there is no final boss. No permanent kingpin, just a revolving door of faces with new phones, new tricks, and the same old hunger. This empire was collapsed, but as soon as one is destroyed, a new one is born. Somewhere right now, a new drug trafficking empire is rising, and we have to fight it.